I'm Dr. Richard Shirley. I'm a research fellow at the University of Exeter and a research associate with the University of Cape Town. I'm here on Robben Island studying African penguins. These penguins behind me are endangered. They've decreased by about 90% in the Western Cape in the last 10 years and about 80% in South Africa over that same time period. One of the main reasons we believe for the decline is a lack of food. So they eat sardine and anchovy and they're having difficulty finding enough food. So they're very poor survival and poor breeding success in some cases. So these penguins eat sardines and anchovy. Together we refer to those as forage fish. And globally, forage fish are really important. They make up about a third of the world's fisheries catch and they are key species in many ecosystems. So a lot of predators rely on forage fish for their food. But it's not clear really how much fishing affects forage fish themselves, the behaviour of the fish and the way that they school, and so equally it's not clear how fishing affects predators by its impacts on forage fish. We've been working here to try to understand if fishing pressure impacts on the penguins using fisheries closures around their breeding colonies. So since 2008 we've had years where 20 kilometres around Robben Island has been closed to fishing, and some years where 20 kilometres around Dassin Island, further to the north, has been closed to fishing. And we're using this system to try to pick apart the impacts of the environment and direct fishing pressure, removing fish from the area around the islands. We've worked with the Fisheries Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries in South Africa to try to get information on the availability of fish around the island, but it's been quite difficult to understand how much food is available to the birds and how that changes on a regular basis. So we're now using a new piece of equipment, a multi-beam sonar that really maps fish distributions, maps fish schools in very high resolution. And we're hoping to use the areas around the closed areas and the open areas to really look at the to really look and see whether fishing has any impact upon the way the fish behave. So forage fish group up into these huge big schools, and it seems there's some evidence which suggests that they try to do that even when they get down to very low numbers. When their populations get very small, they still attempt to group into these very big schools. And whether or not fishing can affect that behaviour by breaking the schools up into smaller schools or by leaving behind fish that have been stunned or dazed by the fishing process is not clear. And there's some suggestion that fishing might be able to benefit birds through that process, benefit predators through that process, but equally fish are being removed as part of the fishing process. So we're really trying to understand with this new multi-beam sonar whether or not the fish change their behaviour in response in the presence or absence of fishing. And in turn we hope to be able to see whether or not the penguins change their behaviour in the presence or absence of fishing. So along with trying to understand the distribution of the fish and the behaviour of the fish at sea, we're also trying to understand the behaviour of the penguins at the same time. So we're here on Robben Island to put GPS tracking devices onto the birds. So these are devices that use satellites to track where the birds go when they're at sea, and pressure sensors to understand when the birds are diving and how much they're diving and how hard they're working. So we go and look for birds that are guarding medium-sized chicks, catch them and attach the GPS device for one foraging trip. The birds go out to sea, they hopefully find fish, and we record where they go and how hard they have to work. And we should be able to see our penguins at sea feeding on the schools of forage fish that we detect with the multi-beam sonar. So we're back in the field office and we've got the first logger back from the penguin, so we can have a look at the trip that it did, see where it went, and we can hopefully, if all goes well, have a look and see where the bird went. So there we go. Managed to get some positions, and the bird's gone up to the northeast of the island, gone in to shore, and actually quite a short foraging trip. And this is just basically the core area that it used, and you can see in this case well within the in the 20-kilometre closure area that would be closed to fishing during the closed years at Robben Island. So the bird did about a 30-kilometre round trip, so not a long trip. The ecosystem, here is really dynamic. It changes very quickly, and the predator-prey interactions are hugely complex. And because it's all happening at sea where we can't see it, it's really hard to get a handle on. So this is a sort of a pilot study. It's a first step to try and understand how well the multi-beam sonar will work here to give us information on the shapes and sizes of the schools and how the fish behave, and to understand how much information we can get from tracking penguins at the same time, how well we can do these two things together to try and understand that. So we've been very lucky that Pew Charitable Trusts have given us money to do this pilot study, and we're really hopeful that the information will be a big step change on what we've been able to get before, and we'll be able to go on and do this in the next couple of years. If we can understand a little bit better how the predators and the prey interact, and how the sort of third dimension of fishing affects those interactions, then we can really start to say something meaningful about whether these small-scale closures are benefiting the penguins, and on top of that, other predators as well. So things like Cape cormorants that feed on the same prey resources also breed on these islands. And we can really start to say something meaningful about whether small-scale marine protected areas work for predators that are feeding on pelagic resources, because it's really not clear on a global scale whether or not these things should be useful. And if we have these fisheries closures in place, they have a potential impact for the industry, they have a potential impact on jobs, and if they're not benefiting the birds, then we need to think again about a different approach, and that's something we hope we should be able to really pick apart with this work.